up, everybody? Sven Diesel here. We're going to be tying up the Straggle ant. This pattern comes from mainly two different tires, Lance Egans Biotic ant, and Paul Proctor ties a, I believe he calls it the Terrestrial, Straggle Terrestrial. He uses this technique on a lot of his ants and beetles, but basically I'm going to be combining the two. And so we're going to start here with the stealth hook. This is a D14. I tie these usually in 14 to 18s and had really good luck with them in those sizes. So we're going to use a Semperfli. This is a waxed thread in a 12-aught, and I'll go ahead and just start the thread right here behind the eye. And I'm going to lay down a little bit of thread here on the shank to get a nice little thread base, because we are going to be putting some foam cylinder on this. And before I do that, I'm just going to put down a little bit of super glue. Not super thick so it gets everywhere, just a small little layer. This helps when we're tying in a foam cylinder kind of to keep it in place and keep it on the top of the shank, and also increase the durability. But here's a Semperfli. This is a foam cylinder, really nice foam. I believe it's they have a way of cutting it that is just awesome. So I'm just going to loosely tie that in so that I got a nice little bit coming off the head and a little bit more coming off the rear, and we'll just lay down some nice wraps there. I'm trying not to get it too tight and compressed, because compressing the foam decreases its buoyancy and floatability. So I want to make sure it's secure, but not have loose wraps. And for the wing, we're going to be using some trigger point fibers. These are EP. They should float without any treatment, and we're just going to cut out a little section here, and I'll trim the end. And what I generally do is I cut this out and I'll just tie it in, and I usually tie up half dozen at a time. And so I'll just set this piece aside once I tie it in and trim it out, and I'll continue to use it on and on for the remainder of the bugs I'm tying. Now I like to have this butt end stick a little bit up, and so I'll just go ahead and trim this, and then we will move on to our next step. But before I do that, I want to make sure this wing is a little bit fanned out, and now I'll kind of do a wrap behind underneath that foam just to kind of prop it up just a tad bit. And so double check that wing, and it looks good to me. So now we're going to add some centipede legs. These are by Montana Fly Company, and they are really awesome. I'm going to cut one in half, and then I'll basically use that for the whole all four legs that we'll be tying. So I'll cut it or fold it in half here, and I'm going to make sure that the end goes out beyond the tail. I'll go ahead and tie both sides in at this point, and you can see it just goes right about the same length as our wing. And then as I tie forward, I'm going to stretch these out just a little bit. It keeps it a little bit of a more slender body, and also allows us to just use one half piece of a leg. So we're being a little bit frugal with our materials, and I like to kind of figure eight these to kind of get it to stick out a little bit more, so that it's not going forward, but rather a little bit out to help it in the water, so that it rides good and doesn't float on its side or upside down. And so make sure they're sticking a little bit out, and I also think that ants' legs generally do that. So there you go. But I'll figure eight the rear now, just making sure they stick out a little bit beyond the wing, and we'll do the same to the other side, making sure not to do too tight of wraps at this point, because that technically with this 12-aught thread could maybe cut those rubber legs. I've had that happen before, where I pull on it just a little bit and it breaks, and I think that's because my thread wraps were a little too tight. So that looks pretty good. This one we want just a little bit more forward, so I'll do a couple more wraps there, and we are ready for our body material now. And I'm going to be using some Straggle string, and this is the black. It's got a little bit of blue or purple tint to it as well, and I'll just tie in a section here on the top of the shank, and then work my thread up to in front of our front legs, and we'll leave it there. Now I'm going to do one wrap behind these legs. That also helps to push them out just a little bit more, and gives us a little bit longer of a body. But I'll now work my way up and forward, and just basically palmer this around the shank of the hook, working our way up to the front legs. And there's so many fibers coming out of this that I'm not too concerned about trapping a few, and so I'm not like preening these back or anything. Generally I'm tying these pretty quick, and so I just usually zip it on the roto vise and get 6 to 10 turns in there, and then we'll go ahead and do one in front of these legs, making sure to go all the way around with a full wrap, so that when we go ahead and wrap behind that and then in front of it, it secures it, and we can go ahead and snip that out at this time. Makes it a little easier. You could do another behind and in front wrap, but what I do now is just pull those legs back. I don't have that string, the butt end of that straggle string in the way, and then I'll do a few wraps here in front of the foam before I whip finish, just to kind of prop that up a little bit, and then we'll do a double whip finish, and I'm just going to do a 3-turn whip finish. So that's pretty much the bug. We just got to trim the legs, but pretty simple, basic pattern. I like the durability of this, using the straggle string as the body. It adds bugginess and potentially a few more legs. And I know that Lance, on his Biotic ant, he uses hackle and then trims it on the bottom side. But I've really had good luck with this straggle string, and I don't know which is more or less expensive, but I do like the durability of the straggle string. So thanks to Lance and Paul Proctor for their patterns, and hopefully you guys like this. Like I said, I fish them in black and also in brown. I've had good luck with them, so tie some up in a few different sizes and go ahead and fish them, and hope they pierce some lips for you.